Thank you so much, everybody, for coming to this CURC members meeting. It's good to see so many familiar names in the chat, even if we can't be in person together at a conference or doing these meetings around the nation. But it's great to see you all. We were happy because, maybe this members meeting can attract some people who wouldn't be able to travel also. So this is a good first step for CURC to really have this kind of meeting, and we're excited about it. All right, so I'm Eric Halverson. I'm the program coordinator with CURC. I've been working with CURC for about 2 years as the sole employee, helping out the board of directors while we help CURC fill out its mission. So I'm excited to be kind of moderating for this presentation today. So I'll get started with some housekeeping notes. First, so that you know, this meeting will be recorded if you want to share your video or not. We're going to be recording this so we can hopefully share with some people who aren't able to make it today. First of all, we ask you to please remain muted during our presentations so that we don't catch any hot mics, catch any people, getting to relax while we share information about what CURC's been up to and what we're thinking about for the future. But feel free to post questions in the chat at any time, right, where people are introducing themselves. We'll go through them during the open discussion time. And during the discussion, also feel free to unmute your audio then and open up your video and ask any questions that you have. Or add any comments and suggestions for us in that open discussion. For the breakout sessions at the end of the Zoom, you've been pre-assigned to a breakout room based on your registration. But if you find that where you end up isn't exactly where you want to be, you can always switch rooms by coming back into the main room and asking the host to move you, and we'll be happy to do that. Any issues during the meeting, you can text that number that you see on the screen there, 860-259-2881. Maybe jot that down if you're expecting any technical difficulties, and that should be helpful for you. And also, the recording will be available on the CURC website soon if you have to run out or if you end up wanting to share with a colleague. That's our website right there, curc3r.org. This is our agenda for today. We're going to do a quick CURC 2020 year in review with Jen, and then we're going to move on to a 2020 celebration slideshow, which many of you submitted pictures to, member successes throughout the year. In an especially challenging and unique year, we wanted to celebrate some of the flexibility and determination that we showed during this year. For the next 10 minutes after that, we're going to go over the CURC survey, which we put out kind of to engage our members and see what our members were up to and get some important opinions and input on what CURC is thinking about moving forward with. After that, we're going to move into questions about what we're going to do next year in 2021. We have some exciting ideas and some new things that we definitely want to run by you and get your input on. So stick around for that. Finally, that open discussion, which will be good after moving on from the 2020 year in review. You can add any comments, make suggestions, ask questions about what we're thinking about. That way, CURC can continue to be a resource for everyone here and for everyone working on waste management and higher ed for sustainability. All right, and then finally, we're going to end after wrapping up our presentations with regional breakout rooms, which we're really excited about because that was something that many people wanted to see CURC moving forward with, so that people who are close by to each other can get connected, discuss our opportunities for engagement, and really share some resources and just exchange contacts maybe. So we're excited about that. All right, and with that, I will hand it over to Jen, and she's gonna kick us off with some notes about CURC and what we've been doing the past year.
Thanks, Eric. Welcome everyone from all of our friends around the US and Canada. We're excited that you could spend your morning or afternoon with us for a little while today. And my name is Jennifer Maxwell. I'm the Sustainability Program Manager for Appalachian State University, and I'm currently your chair for CURC. Just wanted to kind of acknowledge the time that we're in, and it's been quite a difficult year on so many levels, and in many ways continues to be. And so just want to acknowledge that a lot of people have had great loss and hardships, and so we acknowledge and honor that at this time. So thank you again for being here and for being involved in CURC, and we're just really grateful to have you. So I I wanted to, just in case you're new to CURC or kind of a newer member, or you're just joining today to get to find out a little bit about CURC, what CURC is about, I wanted to sort of share, we represent over 900 college or sustainability professionals at colleges and universities across, like I said, the United States and Canada. And they were really a technical knowledge and networking opportunity organization. We like to share best practices and educational resources, but really are a community. And so I've been giving this a lot of thought, and I was sharing earlier with some of our other board members. And I had a really great conversation yesterday with Karen Kaplan from University of Oregon. And many of you know Karen. She was one of our founding members. And it really brought up a lot in our conversation yesterday about what CURC is and the sense of community that it brings. And so I had a funny story I wanted to share, because I thought more and more about that and kind of what it means to me and why I've continued to be involved. And so I have been a part of CURC for almost 20 years now. And so I am an old deadhead. Some of you know that about me. And so there's a term with deadheads about getting on the bus. And so I got on the bus with the Grateful Dead a long time ago, but I also was reflecting on my first time with CURC. And so it was in 2008 in Denver, Colorado. It was the NRC conference. And I was super young, and I quite literally got on the bus for a tour with CURC. So that was my very first interaction with any CURC members. And I have made friends with many of them over the years. And so not only did I quite literally get on the bus, but I've been a part of CURC ever since. So it really is a sense of community, a lot of friendships developed. And so I'm really happy to be a part, and I'm glad you are as well. We really care about one another here, and that's super important, especially right now. So, okay. Next slide, Eric. So I'm going to go through a little bit about what we've been up to this year. You can just jump to the next one if you don't mind, Eric, so I can jump in about the webinar series. So one of our most popular things that CURC does is a webinar series. It's always really successful, and we have done we've been really intentional the last couple of years with really listening to our membership and getting some input on what you want to get from these webinars. And so we had a great slate of presentations this year. I'm not going to go through each one individually, but a lot of great case studies and successes from our peer institutions that you got to benefit from hearing from them. And you know, you're going to get the opportunity later in this meeting as well to vote for this year's, some of this year's webinar series. So we'll be putting that information out here shortly. I did want to just hone in on the October 15th food waste reduction, recovery, and composting, because that one was in lieu of our getting together for our workshop at ASHE. And so we've just had a really fantastic extended webinar. It was a great success in spite of not being able to be together. And so I'm really proud of our team for pulling something off that was really equally as successful as our in-person workshops. Next slide. Membership survey. So Eric mentioned this, but again, we did do a survey early on last year to hear from our membership about, you know, what your needs are, what some of your challenges are with being engaged with CURC, as well as some of our equity, diversity, and inclusion work that we wanted to pull our membership about. And so Leanna is going to be sharing quite extensively about that survey later, so I won't go into great detail. We also partnered with the U.S. Composting Council and Elevate Packaging this year for a COVID reopening survey, just trying to get an idea of what it looks like at schools for post-COVID and how people are reacting to it. What are some of the things that your challenges were, and to try to identify some resources that we could provide as an organization for you all to help you through that. From there, we were able to do a pre-recorded session, and Eric was generous and was our moderator for that session for ASHE, where we shared a lot of those results of that survey and just kind of gave a snapshot of where everybody was. And that information is all available on our website. If you want to take a look at that recorded session, it's available for you to do that if you'd like to. And then we had a kind of a phase 2 survey. So we partnered with Zero Waste Campus Council, the NRC Campus Council, Bush Systems, and then US Composting Council again to kind of roll out a second survey. So this one is still open until January 22nd. So if you haven't had the chance to participate, I really encourage you to do so, just so you can kind of see what some strategic planning and long-term possibilities might be for your programs and how you might contribute to that. And so again, it's available on our website and open through January 22nd. That's something you'd like to participate in. And that's just, again, really looking at, are there some ways that we can take the situation that we're in and try to build in some long-term successes? Next slide. All right, so newsletters. So we increased our frequency of the newsletter to monthly. And this year we actually have one coming out next week, and we are going to stagger those to be every other month on the opposite month of our webinar. So you'll be hearing from CURC monthly, whether it be through the newsletter or webinar. Eric has done a fantastic job on our social media presence, and we even expanded to Instagram this year. And so if you haven't joined up and you like to participate in Insta, then we're CURC3R, so you can join us there. We have developed a lot of new partnerships this past year, and we have a great partnerships page, so you're welcome to visit that to see all the wonderful partners we're working with. We are continue to expand and grow our resources, and we're really trying to capture a lot of case studies from peer institutions. And so if you check out our resources page, you'll see some really great stuff there. And if you're interested in contributing to that, then reach out to us and let us know, because we really feel the value in kind of hearing from our peers. What works for them is really valuable for us. And so we want to share that with our membership. And then we're continuing to work to strengthen our sponsor relationships. And so that's ongoing. Our finance and sponsorships committee has been working really hard trying to identify those potential sponsors and coming up with a structure that works well and is beneficial to everyone. So if you have interest in being a part of that, we'll be chatting about that later as well. Next slide. Okay, and then we also have developed a new committee, an ad hoc committee called JEDI, Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. We're going to be spending some time later, and Liz is going to lead us in some discussion about this new committee and some of the work that we've looked at and sort of the direction that we're taking. And we want to hear from you all as well. And so I won't jump into that too much, but I just wanted to let you know we've been quite busy this year. I think our next slide is me turning it over to Margaret. So Margaret's going to take over, and we're going to start the slideshow for our successes for our member institutions. So welcome. Thanks again for being here, and so happy to have you.
All right. Thanks, Jen.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. I'm Margaret. I'm our CURC board secretary, and I also work at Connecticut College. I don't know if you were like me, but it felt like 2020 started off with momentum, and then suddenly everything came to a stop when the pandemic happened. Suddenly we were trying to figure out how we could keep our student interns working. We were planning for a virtual Earth Day instead of all of the neat things that we had planned. And we were wondering what the fall would even look like. Would we have students? Would we not have students? And if you were also like me, it might have felt like all of your progress towards reusables on campus was suddenly wiped out with just one fell swoop. But through it all of us found new ways to connect and collaborate on our campuses and between our campuses. We tried out new virtual event formats and got the chance to think differently about our work. So with this collection of photos, we are excited to celebrate the ways that you all thrived in 2020 despite all of the challenges.
Is that looking good so far, everybody?
That was awesome. I was like taking note of all of the ideas of things I want to do based on the things I saw on your campuses. So now I am going to kick it over to Leanna.
Thanks, Margaret. Okay, so I think we all know how absolutely thrilling presentations on survey results can be. Am I right? So I thought we'd throw in a little humor from our friends in Schitt's Creek. I don't know about many of you, the rest of you, but I got hooked this past couple of months. So many of you may get the references. If you don't, I highly recommend you start binging this show immediately. It's awesome. First off, thank you to everyone who participated in the CURC survey last summer. I know between CURC and our partners, the U.S. Composting Council, Bush Systems, Zero Waste Campus Council, and the NRC, you've been asked to participate in a lot of surveys, and we greatly appreciate your time and feedback. Our hope is that through these surveys, we will be better equipped to understand your circumstances and your current as well as future needs so that we can develop resources to support your work. Next slide. In terms of participation, we heard from 44 of you across the US representing 32 schools, including two historically Black colleges and universities. Propelled by the national reckoning on racial injustice that was sparked by the murder of George Floyd last May and the critical importance of inclusivity, we were very intentional in our desire to know whose voices we were hearing from in this survey, as well as those voices who we were not hearing from. Next slide. As you see, the majority, 80% of the respondents identified as non-Hispanic, white, or Euro-American. 4 respondents identified as Black, Afro-Caribbean, or African-American. 1 as Latino or Hispanic American or Latinx, and 1 as Native American or Pacific Islander. 70% of the respondents identified their gender as female, including transgender women, while 25% identified as male, including transgender men. 2 respondents preferred not to answer or to self-describe. And finally, the predominant titles held by respondents included sustainability or recycling managers, directors, and coordinators. Next slide. As you may know, the environmental field has historically, previous slide. As you may know, the environmental field has historically been dominated by white people, and our sector is no exception. Among the things we will work on as part of the JEDI ad hoc committee, which Liz will discuss in detail in just a minute, is how CURC can actively contribute to diversifying our membership so that our work represents and supports the reality and experiences of our communities, both on and off campus. We also want to continue to expand our understanding of diversity and inclusion to include the full range of professions that make up the work that we do, like our essential partners and colleagues in the trades, facilities, operations, and custodial fields. There is much work to be done, and we at CURC are fully committed, and we want you to join us. Next slide. So we were excited to hear what you found most valuable about CURC. Of the resources we provide, 90% of you found webinars to be of value, followed by 61% appreciating both the sharing through Recycle and the information in our newsletter. 43% said they value the content at the CURC workshop, which was, as Jen mentioned, virtual this year. And for the 34% of you that enjoy the networking aspect of the workshop, we hope to be back together in 2021, but we'll see. Finally, 27% of you continue to find what you need on our website, curc3r.org. When we asked how CURC can provide even greater value to you, we heard that you would like grant funding opportunities, toolkits, a hotline for those burning recycling questions, members only webinars, regional networking opportunities, and a focus on inclusivity and environmental justice. We take your feedback very seriously and are already working on these last two suggestions, as Jen mentioned, which you will hear about very soon. Not to brag, but it turns out you want to engage with us on the board more. And again, we are already responding to your wishes to participate in regionally based mini workshops and ad hoc committees, as well as having greater input on webinar topics and joining a semi-annual board business meeting. Speaking of webinar topics, 77% of you are satisfied or very satisfied with our webinars. We are happy to announce the first 3 webinars for 2021 will be the Government Recycling Demand Champion Program presented by the Northeast Recycling Council. In April, a Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion training, which will be free and open to anyone. I know that these can be very expensive, so we really want you to spread the word on that so everyone can be have access to this important training. And then finally in June, what we are hearing about, I know Margaret mentioned, how do we bring back our reusable takeout programs or initiate a reusable takeout program in the midst of COVID. So we'll have a case study on that. We're very excited about it. These topics came from you, and now we need you again to vote on the remaining 3 webinar topics. So next slide. So as mentioned, you get to choose the 3 topics that we have for 2021. So Margaret is going to bring up a poll. If you could take a couple of seconds to complete the poll, and then we will work towards adding those to our slate for the remainder of 2021. We'd like for you to choose your top 3 topics. And Margaret, when those are done, I don't know if you wanted to share the results.
Sure, I'll wait a couple more seconds. We're 75% voted. We've got like some tight competition.
That's good.
Yeah.
That always helps start the results for the next year.
Yep. All right, I'll leave it up for a couple more seconds, but it looks like almost everyone has voted. The top vote getter was working upstream to minimize waste through purchasing. The next one was integrating operational and custodial teams in waste reduction and diversion planning. And then number 3, very close behind that, was integrating reduction and reuse into messaging.
Excellent. Okay, so we will get to work planning in these engaging, informative webinars on such important issues. So thank you all for sharing your voice. Again, we are all CURC, so we definitely want to hear from you and make sure that the work that we're doing behind the scenes is relevant and meets your needs. Next slide. Okay. So the last part of the survey addressed racial justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And if you do watch Schitt's Creek, you know that like CURC, it isn't the most racially diverse show. I think we see that a lot in all aspects of our lives, a lack of representation. So not surprisingly, with 80% of the respondents being white, when we ask the question, is CURC adequately addressing equity? We don't know. We're not sure. But I would say based on our preliminary discussions as a board over the past 8 months, we are pretty sure that we have not. But we pledge to do better and always listen first. Some suggestions for how CURC can be more diverse and inclusive include intentional recruitment of more people of color to our organization and board through direct recruitment at HBCUs, more diverse institution types like trade schools, community colleges, rural, urban, all of the different types of institutions that we represent. Working to engage with our operational staff and involve them as our additional target audiences. Student groups, diversity centers on our campuses, and as well as providing internships for BIPOC students. And finally, as we are about to hear about, 15 of you volunteered to join our JEDI ad hoc committee, and you're going to hear about that from Liz. And again, if you didn't take the survey, that's okay. But we do encourage you to reach out to us directly if you'd like to be included in that ad hoc committee. If you're worried about time commitment, then don't worry, just reach out and we will be happy to receive your input and suggestions either at every meeting or just through email or what have you. So don't be discouraged. Please just reach out to us. We invite you to join us. So a huge thank you to, again, to everyone who participated in our survey. The CURC board is committed to listening to you, and we encourage you to share your thoughts, concerns, questions, and suggestions to us throughout the year, not just on our annual survey. And if you click one more time, Eric, feel free to reach out. Oh, sorry. I had an animation, didn't work. Feel free to reach out to us with whatever's on your mind at curc3r@gmail.com. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Liz to speak about our newly formed JEDI ad hoc committee, which you've heard about a few times.
Awesome. Thanks, Leanna. I'm Liz Genelat, and I manage the recycling and solid waste at the University of Washington in Seattle. As mentioned, over a dozen people volunteered to join the new ad hoc committee focusing on justice, equity, diversion, and inclusion, or JEDI for short. It is a little bit of a mouthful sometimes. Can't fit on the title of the slide. I want to thank everyone who volunteered already and reiterate that the committee and our focus on these topics will continue as a priority in 2021. And if you haven't already provided your information, my email is on the screen. Please reach out to me if you'd like to join so we can work together on it in the future. So far, we've had an internal meeting with the board members that volunteered on the committee to review CURC's commitment to JEDI, as well as discuss what resources we have and what we're going to need to move forward with the committee. We also took a lot of time for self-reflection to understand what we mean by these terms, why they're important to us personally and professionally, and brainstorm ways to integrate these ideals throughout our internal processes, as well as in our public programming, whether the topic is directly about JEDI or about anything else that we work on. And really during that discussion, we realized we needed to take a step back and try to prevent jumping directly into action. And a lot of times, waste professionals, we want to just get it done. We know there's a problem, we want to fix it. And that's our immediate instinct. And we're actively reminding ourselves to take it slow and allow more input and inclusion on the process. And the survey was a really helpful resource. So thanks for everyone that filled that out. On the slide, I've included a diagram that I learned about recently called the problem challenge cycle. And it was created by the Center for Diversity in the Environment, who recently did an equity and inclusion training workshop hosted by the West Coast Climate and Materials Management Forum. They explained that often folks want to jump directly from that awareness to action, and that can be a real pitfall to successful progress when you're trying to fix a problem. And so in order to fully dive into that information gathering, that analysis, and that planning section, we had to recognize that the board and our membership, like Leanna mentioned, are not experts on increasing diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. So we've decided to find consulting firms that specialize in this work in order to help the board strategize, structure the ad hoc committee, as well as join that April webinar. And we're still working through the process of selecting consultants currently. In general, we're very excited about the opportunities this project is going to create. And again, please reach out to me at lizg9@uw.edu if you'd like to be involved. And next slide. And so along with the justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion work, we're hoping to work with the consultants to move CURC's or CURC's organizational development forward. The College University Recycling Coalition name is a little dated and only covers a small part of the work that our membership does. And for many years, and possibly since the start, CURC has been broadly defining the recycling in the name as a stand-in or an entry point for sustainable materials management, waste reduction, waste diversion, waste avoidance, source reduction, and conscientious consumption, and all of those other topics that start with RE that are so important for our group. And now that our work and the more broad sustainability landscape has helped us to create awareness that recycling is not the end-all be-all solution to waste management that we should all be investing in, we're intentionally considering the need to more overtly reflect that concept in our name in order to bring a wider audience to the table. Hopefully this work will evolve the organization to meet the current and future state of waste management and the needs of our members. And next up, Eric is going to be reviewing any questions or comments from the chat. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat now, and we're going to start our open discussion.
We had a slide about open discussion.
I was going to say, do we talk about this now? But I'll wait. I think we did have a slide and it disappeared.
And Eric, you're muted if you're talking.
Found it.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, please send any thoughts and questions you might have in the chat, and the board members who are here will be happy to help. But also, you know, we're just here to talk with members about what's going on. So we can start with this one question about how to become a partner with CURC. And that's a pretty informal process. You can email curc3r@gmail.com, and I can just get in contact with you and we can exchange information and see what people are interested in. And then we can talk about your organization or what you want to see from a partnership. And we go from there. We work with a bunch of different types of nonprofit groups that are working to, work on sustainable materials management. And project by project, we try to do that, whether that be a webinar, a survey, or a resource, like a case study or a survey or something like that. So come along to that. There's a question about this being available on the CURC website. These slides will be available on the CURC website, as well as a recording of the meeting in case you want to go over what we've talked about today. Thank you, BJ, for that nice comment in the chat. Of course, BJ's helped CURC way more than any of us could talk about right now. So that's great. And to the sponsors that have made this organization possible, very great. We're looking for sponsors for 2021. So that's another great way you can help out with CURC. Check out our sponsorships page on our website, and you can get in contact with us about sponsoring, which we have opened up to newsletters. We like to do for webinars, and on a case-by-case basis also.
I'll add real quick, Eric, while we're waiting, just about those partnerships. And again, that really the value in for college and university programs is that there are a lot of great partners out there doing lots of work. And so the more that we can collaborate together, the more benefit it is to our membership. You know, there's no need ever to reinvent the wheel. And so it's super helpful for programs that are just starting or just getting off the ground to have all of these resources. And there's just so many great resources out there. So we really value those partnerships, and it brings that value up to all of you.
Eric, do we want to stop the screen share for just a little bit so we can all see each other? Maybe that helps with conversation.
I can also plug the February webinar, which hasn't really been announced and shared yet, but like we talked about, it's going to be like our friends from the Northeast Recycling Council. That's an example of a partner hopping on a project with us. That webinar will be about their government recycling demand champion program, which is also a upstream way to minimize waste and kind of focus on purchasing recycled content in whatever your purchasing policy is. So they're going to walk through some ways that you can do that as a college, and they also offer technical assistance with that. And we're also looking for schools to talk about their own purchasing policies. So if you have a particularly exemplary purchasing policy, we'd love to talk to you, and we'd love to hear your experiences and knowledge about those kind of things. This first question we can begin with, can some of the board members and others talk about the idea of rebranding CURC? What do you want to gain, and what do you want to make sure not to lose? Great question.
So I'll kick us off, I guess. I'll start and then y'all chime in. I think, you know, what we definitely do not want to lose the essence of what CURC is. And again, I mentioned earlier, and I'll talk about it again, that sense of community, that opportunity for us to lean on one another and share resources and really, you know, look for these successful programs, also look for the challenges and barriers that help our other institutions. So we don't want to lose any of that essence of CURC. We just want to broaden it and make it better. And so it's a lot of it, like Liz discussed earlier, is about the term recycle, and it just that we've always done more than just recycle. And so that are part of CURC. And so the challenge, I think, is in us, you know, rebranding, but also keeping that recognition so that people know that it's still the same group. So I think there's quite a challenge there. Larry is not here today, he's under the weather, but when we talked about it, he had this great kind of visual image of the college and university R coalition, and the R's rolling with rethink and resilient and refurbish and all the re's, you know, reuse, reduce. And so I think that that's part of our challenge, is how do we, you know, it's such a great organization. And so how do we make it better and really kind of expand? And we've done a lot of that work with our board. You know, a lot of us are, like for myself, I kind of transitioned from that operational waste reduction and recycling side of things over to sustainability, but there's a lot of colleges and universities that have a recycling office and a sustainability office. And so how do we kind of broaden so that we're capturing both of those areas, and again, like really looking at that sustainable materials management and just going beyond that R, recycle, for just recycle. And so I'll stop there and let someone else chat.
I'll just throw in there, I mean, we joked about, it would be CURC.
Yeah.
All those R's. But I think that that's funny and all, but if you think about like the R's as a spectrum, that, we can all plug in at different places. Some of our schools may not have, the capacity to have really robust diversion programs where they're collecting all of these ancillary waste streams and managing all of that. But also we've always said, we keep preaching, year after year after year. I mean, our recycling is that last R, whether it is, all of these other R's ahead of it, or it's the traditional reduce, reuse, recycle. It's always been the last one. And I think within our individual institutions, we've done a lot to kind of go to the front of that with all of, the rethink, redesign, reuse, repurpose, all of that. But again, we all have different capacities, whether it be financial or staffing or regulations, and like actual literal, you don't have a composting facility in your community. So there's all of these different places to plug in. And I think so in one sense, this rebranding is much more opening up to all of the possibilities where people can plug in and then, maybe grow or change. And then in all reality, we are a nonprofit. And so we do rely on our partners and our sponsors. And having that R, we're concerned that, just focusing on recycling, it might be a little bit limiting in those relationships that we can build outside of our schools. And I think, also as we move into the JEDI discussion, we really do see the rebranding as integral with the JEDI work that we want to do. And so I think it expands a lot of what we're doing, not just on the operational side of recycling, but like that environmental justice piece, the social piece. So I'm really excited. I don't want to dismiss any of the work that's been done by all of these wonderful people. I won't mention names in particular, but I think you all know who you are that have come before us. And we really just want to build on that foundation and, acknowledge how much we've evolved and grown and, take us into the next decade and beyond. Also, I realized that I didn't introduce myself, and there are a bunch of other board members on the call that were not presenting. So I'm Leanna Hauser. I'm the Waste Reduction and Recycling Manager at Johns Hopkins University, and I am the Vice Chair of the CURC board. And we'll maybe kick it off. I see Franklin on the call. Franklin, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Franklin Cantor. I'm the special assistant to the president at Haverford College. Part of my role involves sustainability in the waste stream. It's great to see you all, and thanks for joining today. I'm a board member.
Mark, you want to jump in?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Klapach-Mathias, and I work at the University of Wisconsin River Falls as a sustainability and custodial supervisor. And in that role, I coordinate all of our trash and recycling operations on campus, and I am a board member.
Brittany, I see you down there.
Hey, can y'all hear me? Okay, just making sure. Different mic. I'm Brittany Mora. I was the recycling coordinator at Clemson University, but I actually just left at the end of the year. So I'm a board member. That's pretty much my role right now. Hey, everyone.
She was our
I was the chair.
Robert.
Rob Johnson, Northern Virginia Community College board member.
I'm trying to scroll through. Is there anybody else that we're missing?
That's what I was trying to do to you. I don't think So if you are, just speak up.
I think we're going to talk a little bit about this real quick as we wrap up. But there were some questions in the chat about how do you become a board member, and I had a slide because we did ask in the survey about like barriers to board membership and engaging, and then we also talked about how do you want to engage more with the board. And one of those ways is ad hoc committees. And so, well, first of all, you don't need to be nominated. You can self-nominate for board membership, and people are transitioning. There's a 3-year term, and we meet about once a month. We've been doing a lot of our work in our subcommittees, and now these newer ad hoc committees. So if you're concerned at all about time commitment or whatever, or you don't feel like you could bring value, you absolutely can bring value. If you're on this call today, I'm sure you have plenty of value to bring to us. But one way to engage is through our committees, and you don't have to be a board member. So I just saw Erin Meyer from UC Merced on the call too. She's just recently joined our marketing and programs subcommittee. So there are ways to plug in, even if you're not, if you don't have the capacity to fully commit to that longer time frame.
And I was going to go through in a little bit, but I'll go ahead since you mentioned that, Leanna, and go through the committees that we have. So Leanna mentioned marketing and programs. We've talked pretty extensively about JEDI. The other 2 committees are our board development committee, if that's an area that you're interested in, and also our finance and sponsorships committee as well. And so if that's an area you're interested in or really passionate about, it's a great way to jump in and get involved with CURC before making the commitment to become a board member. I participated in the program committee before I ever joined the CURC board. It's marketing and programs now, but it was program committee. And so it was a really nice way to contribute and kind of get to know CURC a little bit more before making the commitment to join the board. So you can reach out to us if you're interested in being a part of any of those.
And we've got some questions in the chat we haven't gone over if y'all want.
Yeah, if we want to move on. This next one comes from Rob, talking about if we could consider a webinar or a session about job opportunities for students or recent graduates.
I'll just say, one thing that we have talked about as a board and in the JEDI ad hoc committee is that are there pathways or barriers for students of color to enter into the sustainability space? And are there ways that CURC can provide internships or fellowships or just greater job, or at the very least resume building capabilities? I think so that's something that we're certainly gonna to pursue and think about. Maybe again, like going back to where those sponsorships exist. I think there, as we rebrand and as we really open up and expand who CURC is, that there are probably opportunities to make partnerships with a lot of different groups that would really value putting, financially supporting those kinds of efforts. So I think that is definitely something we are considering. And the other thing is that, there are lots of jobs, internships, career pathways that may not necessarily live, within just higher education. And so I think that's a really important suggestion. I mean, we need to keep ourselves sustainable as well, right? So we need to make sure we have like really invested, engaged, and passionate people kind of coming up with us and after us so that we can continue all of this important work. So duly noted.
And I'll add to that, just another thing is as program coordinators and managers, and a lot of us work with students too. And so just on your end, really trying to encourage them to get involved in these regional and these national groups as well. And so when you have some students that are really particularly passionate about these issues, and it's really great to just kind of bring them in and get them involved as much as possible, even if they're just joining the Recycle listserv and just a way for them to really start to make these connections. We've worked with a lot of students here at App over the years, and we're always trying to encourage them to present at conferences and be a part of workshops and you know, get to know the industry more. So on the flip side of that, you can certainly encourage them to get more involved with CURC. We definitely have talked about what it might look like too to have some student involvement. Again, like Leanna mentioned, interns or maybe a student position on the board, what that might look like to allow more opportunity for students as well.
Moving on there's a couple questions here related to the JEDI work and the justice, equity, and diversity inclusion kind of conversations. This first one asks if we could suggest a few strategies that campuses can work on for those kinds of things, which we might be able to talk about more closer to the webinar. But also, if that webinar, including those strategies, will be including ways to elevate and more justly work with custodial staff who might be more diverse on this person's campus.
Yeah, and Brandon mentioned working with international student groups on campus. I think that's a great way. And instead of like offering, we want to train your campus group about recycling and waste reduction, sort of bringing it back of like, we want to explain what we do. We want to understand more about what you need from us. And, you know, instead of just translate, like not Google translating your signs, but working with those international students to translate them in a way that's more meaningful for those second language speakers, and making sure that it's an inclusive process. So it's not just passing information, but sharing information. So you can make those decisions better. But yeah, hopefully the consultants will help us really build some resources for all of the member campuses to expand those kinds of programs and best practices. But if anyone has best practices like that, feel free to share in the chat or turn off or unmute yourself and share some practices. That would be great.
And I'll just add also that, you know, a lot of what, you know, sparked these conversations, admittedly, probably later than we probably should have had these conversations, was, you know, very much around police brutality against Black people. And so, you know, when we talk about JEDI, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, you know, it is much broader than just racial diversity. And so I think, you know, I want to make sure that we are also, you know, as you mentioned, international students, you know, transgender, you know, the LGBTQ community, abilities, varying abilities. So all of these, you know, diverse experiences and you know, where people are coming from and all of the different aspects of, you know, inclusion. And so I think, you know, what we keep coming back to is that whole listening piece, which Liz referred to, and I know Jen has talked a lot about. You know, the last thing that we should be doing is going into spaces, groups, and, you know, trying to own that discussion. And so I think like one of the most important things is not necessarily an activity that you can do or a real clear direction for what your office can do, but to just constantly make sure that the forefront of everything that you're doing is listening, and you know, with no judgment and no just, you know, accepting and acknowledging and asking to, you know, have conversations and see where they go.
Right, Brandon, you have a hand raise. You want to hop in?
Yeah, thank you for that, Eric. And thank you, Liz. I think that you kind of hit on my point is that it's a sharing opportunity between both, whoever is executing these programs, but it's also that there's a lot for us to learn from such a diverse, I mean, most campuses, at least at our campus at Portland State University, we have a very good international presence. I know UW is the same similarities, and being a coastal communities, I guess maybe we have the presence there. But what we've been able to do is through our Student Sustainability Center and our Waste Reduction Task Force, which is a student-centric group, is by expanding our volunteer reach and trying to bring in new volunteers. We see that the international students, there's actually a lot of interest around this, because it's usually their systems or our systems are somewhat different than what they're used to from in their home communities. And so for us, we also get the opportunity to learn how those changes, if it's through cultural or other means that have really driven their reasoning as to why they package things not individually through durable containers like they do, it's just a part of their process, and they're able to share these kind of best practices day-to-day living. So I think it's really great that we're identifying, or CURC is identifying, that there needs to be more presence from different voices and different walks of all of life through our membership and our participation. But I think it's also our obligation to the campuses as leaders, mentors, members, to be able to take those practices and share them with our campus community. And so it becomes this holistic approach of, giving, taking, sharing, providing, supporting, all of those great things. And so I applaud CURC again for taking this as putting it as a opportunity to improve upon, to learn from one another. And so I thank the board, and thank you for the opportunity for us to look at 2021 as a fresh, new, exciting beginning for so many reasons. But thank you for the time.
Thank you so much, Brandon. That was amazing. If anyone wants to hop on, not just board members, but anyone who, feels as though they want to add on to those points and move on from there, please feel free to unmute or raise a hand or send something along in the chat.
I saw while you're thinking about whether you want to speak up or not, that Red Moyer was on. Do you want to introduce yourself? Sorry about that. When we scanned through, we didn't see you.
No worries, I came in late. Hi everyone, my name is Richard Moyer. I'm the Resource Conservation and Sustainable Operations Manager for Seattle University. I've only been on the board for past, I'm gonna say 6 months now, but learned a lot. It's just really great to be a part of this community and be able to contribute as a board member. So I'm really excited to be here.
Thanks.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you.
I wanted to, I saw Deb's question about any pushback that anyone is getting from integrating the JEDI work into sustainability. Thankfully, we have not, but I would maybe point you to some of the writings and work about, I think it was Pittsburgh, where there was a mini workshop on sustainability and the origins of oppression. And so whether you're looking at, sort of feminist philosophy of, the patriarchy, or you're looking at colonialism and slavery, all of these forms, and then, sort of look at people and as a commodity that can be bought, sold, used, and certainly not appreciated. And so I think that, it may not be the direction that you can go with your VP, but I do think that sustainability, and I think a lot of us would agree that sustainability is absolutely rooted in a lot of those forms of oppression, the looking at our earth as a resource that can be bought and sold and traded and discarded. So I don't know if that's something that you would be the right approach, the right framing for your VP, but I think it all is rooted in a very similar power structure.
And I think pushback mostly I get is just time and resources to work on that and to slow down when I'm planning an event and say like, well, how accessible is this to other students that we haven't seen before, and why, why is our audience the way it is? And taking that time, which can be really hard to talk your supervisors and upper administration into spending that time. And I hope with our consultants, we'll really be able to build out that why message of what we're losing by not fully participating in sustainability. If we're only focusing on sustainability for certain people, then that's not true sustainability. And that sort of global sustainability process and concept that it's, there's no justice unless everyone has justice kind of concept. So yeah, hopefully we'll be able to really build that out so that people can gain support when they don't have it directly in their operations or administration.
One other suggestion I would add that's worked on our campus, at least when we get these questions about sort of how does this fit into sustainability, is that we actually have our own sort of college developed definition of sustainability that we spend a lot of time writing and revising and looking at with lots of different groups that includes, economic justice and social justice. Similar to that sort of 3 pillars Venn diagram that a lot of us use. So having that to show people whenever they ask, what is sustainability? What does the Office of Sustainability do? Having social justice written right in there in the definition really, I think can help convince them that this is why you're working on it. Instead of maybe just using that sort of standard definition of like preserving, I can't even remember the Brundtland report definition, but for future generations, meeting their own needs. So if you might be able to have a process by which you kind of come up with a definition that you're comfortable using on your campus for sustainability, and then it can include all of these different pieces.
I think BJ, we've talked a little bit about that topic in terms of integrating our custodial and other grounds or whichever trades folks who are working a lot of times on the operational side of things, engaging with them. And Bridget brought up a similar point, asking if that would be something that we would be including in our JEDI work. BJ, you wrote in the chat, I don't know if you feel comfortable unmuting yourself.
Working on it. Did you want me to add something, or?
I don't know if everyone's reading in the chat, so I don't know if you just want to reiterate, and maybe was one of the topics that was selected for our remaining webinars, and I think we might be leaning a little bit on you to help maybe present or share some of the work that you've been doing.
Yeah, so Bill Rudy sent me a comment on the side. Sorry, I was wondering if I needed to mask up there for a second. Someone was coming in my office. Yeah, he sent me a comment on the side, mentioned that we're doing day in the life of, but Jen, I'm working with Jen on this. It's really, I'm just helping with the project, but we're gonna, I mixed it with a class project that I'm doing for grad school but really interviewed our staff to find out what they wanted to see in workshops and what was of interest to them, and really kind of getting past this challenge of, in this remote time, how do you integrate them in a meeting like this? You have to make sure they've got a safe place to watch. You've got to make sure they've got a cell phone or a computer, or if they're going to be able to talk, if just like me, I can shut my door right now, but if you're watching in a group room, how do they do that? So I don't have any answers, but I can say that that's something that we've been working on and thinking through and trying to figure out what would be of interest, how to engage, what time span to make it. And one of the things that we're kind of settling on is this day in the life of video that we would hope that, and it's not going to be till March, so we're in the design process now, but we'll, the kind of quote, and I guess this kind of drives it all in, but the quote that I heard from the workers was, if people could see what I see as I do my job, they wouldn't recycle the way they would recycle, or they would recycle differently. And it kind of goes back to that video, I don't know if y'all have used, that has the conveyor belt with the tanglers, and it talks about how, you know, they have to stop the line in a MRF and do a lockout tagout process, and how, you know, their safety is a piece of that as well as their efficiency. And so it's driving, I'm not as eloquent as y'all in describing, but it's really bringing home what it's like to be a recycling worker and giving face and voice to the people who do this kind of work. And I think that that really touches people, some people, to make changes that they might not make otherwise. So it's a self-serving thing on our end, because they have information that we can use and learn from and incorporate into our trainings. And it's also giving, including them and giving them voice and valuing the work. And let's be honest, none of our programs would be anywhere if it weren't for the people who do the work. So I guess that's it in a nutshell. I don't know if Jen has something to add.
Yeah, and you went over it beautifully, BJ. We are kind of working on this, and I did want to add, and it'll be a great segue as we start to talk about the sort of regional meetup idea. This is something that we're doing through our regional group, and it was to be more inclusive, but also that voice is so important, and also that recognition and celebration of our crews, and how we really couldn't do this without them as well. And so that's a lot of reason why we're doing it is, and it is a challenge like BJ described, but it is to really hear from them, and hopefully there'll be a lot of value in that connection to that person or to those people doing that work when it comes to behavior change. You know, if you know that somebody is having to clean up after you, for example, hopefully you would think a little bit more about what you're doing and the way that you choose to discard your waste, or, you know, whatever that looks like with regards to contamination and stuff. And also it's just a really great way to celebrate these people that are so valuable.
And with the PPE right now being put in recycling bins or thrown on the ground, it's even more on their minds in a way that their safety really is part of it.
We'll keep you posted on how it goes.
Yeah, I think we'd all love to hear about that project later on the line, BJ. So make sure to send it in Recycle. We'll do a campus spotlight maybe. But thank you all for this conversation. It's very thoughtful, and I think it's been very insightful for many of us, and including the CURC board, as like feedback for what we want to look at and what programs we want to look at supporting and what you might be interested in. And some more comments are coming to the chat, so please check those out. But we want to wrap up and prepare everybody to move into our regional breakout rooms. There was one question about how partners and sponsors could get involved right now with CURC. I think it would be great for you to reach out to curc3r@gmail.com, like we said before. Get in touch, let us know what you're interested in and what your goals would be, and hopefully CURC can, you know, find something with you to work on. You know, we love people who would support the work that we put in here and the resources we share, and also help us put in some great resources for the people who, you know, made this place in the first place, which is all the people here on the chat. So we will move on and we will introduce our breakout rooms.
All right, back to me a little bit. Just want to talk a little bit about this idea of regional meetups. So it's something that's been on our mind at CURC for quite a while, and it kind of originated with the challenges associated with being able to necessarily travel to our CURC workshop within HE every year. How could we come up with a way to meet regionally and maybe host a CURC sponsored event, you know, so that you wouldn't have to travel to California from North Carolina or to, you know, vice versa. And so this is one of the things that has been the most popular with membership is how do we do this? And so we're still really looking at this and what this might look like even in a more of a virtual setting. And so one of the things that one of our first steps is today we decided to break us out into breakouts based on your geographical location. We are aware that, you know, for us, and I'm going to use our Carolinas group as an example, Collegiate Recyclers Coalition is North and South Carolina. So there are other regional groups within the Southeast, but so we are aware that there are other kind of smaller organizations and groups all throughout the United States and Canada. And we don't want to discount that, but if you're, you know, we will be part of the Southeast group with our Carolinas group, and then we'll likely have others join. It's just a way for us to start these conversations. So when you're in your breakout, if you would just think about, introduce yourselves kind of so everybody can get to know one another. And then think about some of the challenges maybe specific to your region. What are some of the benefits that you find with regional groups if you're part of them? Again, going back to the CRC. So I've been a part of CRC for a long time as well, our Carolinas group. And it is the same as CURC, just such a valuable group. And it's really, I get so much out of being able to connect with schools close by, and we get to run ideas by one another and challenges. The program that we were talking about for operational staff is going to be hosted by that CRC group. And so we'll have lots of colleges and universities within North and South Carolina as part of that. And so just be thinking about things like that when you get into these groups, and also share if you're part of some other regional groups within that area that others don't know about. And then if you have ideas about these meetups, or if you're interested in maybe hosting and partnering with CURC to host one, then you can get in touch with us through the CURC3R at Gmail, right, Eric? CURC3R at Gmail. Yep, sorry. So you've been pre-assigned to a breakout room, and so I think Margaret mentioned in the beginning, but if you find that you are there's not a lot of people in your group, or if you want to move to a different group, you can come back to the main room. Is that right, Margaret? Yeah, so you can come back to our main room, and then Margaret can reassign you. And so, yeah, anything else? Is that kind of, are we good? I'm going to go through some thank yous, but anything else on the breakout session you want me to share? Good to go? Okay. All right, so I'm going to wrap us up today. Thanks so much for attending and spending your part of your day with us. We are just really so grateful for our membership. I just had a few thanks before we head out to the breakouts. Just wanted to thank our entire CURC board for all of your dedication. I'm just incredibly grateful to work with such a phenomenal team, and appreciate you, and Eric, you as well, all every day so much for all the work that you do. It's just very inspiring. Thanks to all of our partners and sponsors for your support over the years. Margaret, Leanna, Liz, and Eric for all your contribution with the PowerPoint today, and all of the good stuff there. And then Margaret for setting everything up, and Eric for kind of running things behind the scenes. And then finally to Leanna and our Marketing and Programs Committee for overall setup of this meeting. Thank you so much, everybody. So great to see you.